Oh, Jelly Roll. Roll of jelly. I didn't even know who you was till last night. And I hate to have to be the one to break it to you, but your privilege was showing. Everything you said is as a result of white privilege.
I didn't have a phone for 18 months. I've had one for 4 months and don't have social media. I hate to be the artist that's that aloof, but I've become so disconnected from what's happening. And I'm just not I grew up in a house of like insane pandemonium and like I didn't even know politics were fucking real until I was in my mid-20s in jail.
Let me explain something to you. Some of us could have no phone, no social media, on a plane, on a train, or down the drain. And we still gonna always know what's going on because it directly impacts us. So that is not enough of an excuse to stand on a stage at the Grammys. At the Grammys, you got the notification to show up there, but you don't know what's going on around the world? The math is not mathing. And it's so interesting to me that people don't understand that the fact that you can ignore politics is a level of privilege. Especially as someone who didn't realize politics were real until you were in prison. That is the reason you should be speaking out against what's going on. Listen, I could just tell that you and your family live in this little bubble of happiness, saying you protecting your peace, but there's literally no peace happening in this country. And for you to say that on stage,
Tell you that people shouldn't care to hear my opinion, man. You know, I'm a dumb redneck. I haven't watched enough. I didn't have a phone for 18 months. I've had one for 4 months and don't have social media. I hate to be the artist that's that aloof, but I've become so disconnected from what's happening. And
I think it's a dangerous stereotype to say that just because you're from the South, that means that you're stupid and that means you're too stupid for politics, because that simply and historically has not been true. What are my qualifications? Well, I am a Southern woman from rural Mississippi who is very political. I think that there's a lot of political movements that have been started down south that we would be remiss to brush over, like infamously Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus sit-in, the Selma to Montgomery marches in the 1960s. I mean, the civil rights movement did span from the 1950s to the 1960s, and that was historically down south, and Southerners were the ones spearheading the movement. The marches and organizing in southern states like Mississippi and Alabama directly pressured Congress to pass the Voting Rights Act, ending racially discriminatory practices that had led ultimately to Black Americans not being able to vote. Let's not forget the work that John Lewis did, coining the phrase good trouble. John Lewis was a congressman from Georgia and a fierce civil rights advocate, a Southern man. He also marched along with who? Martin Luther King. Again, a Southern man, very political. Just because someone says that they aren't political doesn't mean that they haven't benefited from the people who were.
Welcome back to the channel. I want to talk about something which really disappointed me because I was a fan of Jelly Roll. Apparently, he has won 3 Grammy Awards, and while I was watching, I personally went ahead and watched the Grammy. I do watch all the Grammys over the years and how they happen. First of all, shout out to all Black artists who took the top and took all the Grammys. Salute to you, and all other creators and all other musicians. I want to talk about Jelly Roll. I've been listening to Jelly Roll. Actually, one of the most not upcoming, but one of the most good contemporary musicians with good music, right? But there's something that really, really made me sad about him and made me start even thinking about his music and everything as a person who listens to his music. Understand how the eyes have been enhanced today, a lot of Americans. And it is so disappointing that a reporter is trying to ask him, and he says that he doesn't know anything that is happening. He doesn't care about politics, and he doesn't give attention to politics. There's a problem with that, because you as an artist, you act as a mirror, because you need to speak about this. But what if you are not playing or being part of this? It shows that you are part of the problem. And he goes ahead and say that people should not care about his opinion. He went ahead and describes himself as a damn redneck. He personally says that, go look it out. And the excuse that he gives is that he says that he's been disconnected from the internet for 18 months and just recently just got one back. And now when he's going to receive his awards, he starts saying that, oh, you know, I should go and everything. That's just hypocrisy. And this describes the problem that we are having with this type of people. And let me tell you something. Let me just take you back to history a little bit. This moment exposes a pattern that many Black Americans have been pointing out for generations. The belief that within parts of white America, that racial injustice, immigration enforcement, and state violence are not my problem, unless they personally feel or impact me. So Jelly Roll's comment about being disconnected and uninformed didn't land as neutral. It landed as familiar because it reflected a long-standing privilege where one can opt out of paying attention because the consequences are not aimed at them or their community. For Black people, that kind of detachment isn't luxury. It's a signal of how unevenly responsibility is distributed in America. Brothers and sisters, I'm going to let you watch this video and then I'll be back with my thoughts in regards to this.
No, I really don't think y'all ready for this, Jelly. I'm sure by now you probably have seen the Jelly Roll speech at the Grammys. If you haven't, go back and look at it and come back to me. And if you have, then you'll see why a lot of people are gushing over the emotional outpouring of his self-revelation of what he's been through, his triumph and his success, which absolutely is one. But 2026 is the year of you're not going to play in our faces. So you're not going to get up here in front of millions of people on this platform and go into this kumbaya state of everybody be kind to one another. Because telling everybody they need to be kind with one another gives the inference that one is not being kind and the other's not being kind. That's being a little disingenuous now, isn't it? Because you got one part of America, Black, brown, foreign, American, women, any gender, any age, on one side, minding their own business. And then you got another whole group terrorizing everybody else for not being that said group. And while it's catchy and great for headlines to say that Jesus doesn't have a political party, you know, in America where they're pushing the 10 Commandments on children in elementary school, what do you think would happen to a teacher if they chose to want to teach the Quran today to their class? That would be the time when the far right kicks in, wouldn't you think? Let's not act like the Bible wasn't read while the crosses were burning. Let's not act like the Bible wasn't weaponized against the natives in its indoctrination to bring them into the church and strip them of their own heritage, and in many cases, their own lives. See, right now, Jelly, you're on a roll, and it probably is not good for business, given your musical genre, and in this political climate, to want to be critical of Donald Trump. But let's not play in people's faces by saying, oh, I don't know enough about politics, or I don't get into politics, or I don't know enough about it to speak on it. That's cowardly. Because everything's political, whether you want to admit it or not. And if you want to hide behind the Bible, I'm sure the Bible has plenty of teachings too. When you sat there in that 6x8 cell and you were finding yourself trying to get right with Jesus, you can't just say when you're acting all fanboy about Donald Trump at a UFC event, oh, he's the president. Of course I'm going to get excited about the president. Really? Not his teachings, the humanitarian work he's done, the good he's done for people. Just because he's in a position of authority, that's why you're excited to meet him? And it would behoove you to dive into the Epstein files just so that you could see that hand you were shaking, what else that hand was doing to little girls. See, I don't believe for a second you don't know what's going on. Now, I've never been in prison, but I do know that people in prison oftentimes have to gravitate to a certain people affiliation to some types of people. So I'm sure while you were in there coping or for survival, you gravitated to a certain brotherhood. But you're free now, Jasper. You don't have to do that anymore. So you can pretend like you're straddling this fence of ambiguity, but are you? Because you out here right now on a whole Racist Are Us tour with Kid Rock, who I'm sure will be a real hoot at your next Bible study. So you can say all you want, everybody just needs to be kind to one another. But kindness requires an act of kindness, which means you actually have to act kind to people, which hasn't been demonstrated by that person you're so giddy to be around just because they're the president of the United States. fact, you'd have to look far and wide to even have heard him say something kind. You had a strong following and a big platform, so you actually could do good things by speaking on what this country needs. And it's okay to call out things that are wrong. The only people who will have an issue with you calling out things that are wrong are people who are doing wrongdoings. Because right now you could say you're not political. And right now you could say you're not affiliated to any party. But your proximity says otherwise. Because if you're not MAGA, why are you MAGA shaped? You would find yourself having an even greater following if you had the ability to shed that white supremacy ideology like you shed.
First and foremost, I want to give Jelly Roll a shout out for losing all that weight. He looks so good. He went from Jelly Roll to Spring Roll. With that said, he should have read the room last night. Ice out. The ICE protest was the topic last night. Instead of calling out the atrocities that ICE is inflicting on every U.S. city, he took us to church.
There was a time in my life, y'all, that I was broken. That's why I wrote this album. I didn't think I had a chance, y'all. There was days that I thought the darkest things. I was a horrible human. There was a moment in my life that all I had was a Bible this big and a radio the same size and a 6x8 foot cell. And I believed that those two things could change my life. I believed that music had the power to change my life and God had the power to change my life. And I want to tell y'all right now, Jesus is for everybody. Jesus is not owned by one political party. Jesus is not owned by no music label. Jesus is Jesus, and anybody can have a relationship with him. I love you, Lord.
You don't have to be an expert to speak out against bad behavior. I know some celebrities probably don't feel informed enough to comment on what's going on, but look, it's not that hard to turn on the TV and see what the fuck's going on.
I didn't have a phone for 18 months. I've had one for 4 months and don't have social media. I hate to be the artist and static aloof, but I've become so disconnected from what's happening. And I'm just not I grew up in a house of like insane pandemonium and like I didn't even know politics were fucking real until I was in my mid-20s in jail. Like, that's how disconnected. When you grow up in a drug addict household, you think we like have common calls about what's happening in world politics? Like, we're just trying to find a way to survive, man, you know? And I have a lot to say about it, and I'm going to it the next week, and everybody's going to hear exactly what I have to say about it in the most loud and clear way I've ever spoken in my life. So I look forward to it. Thank you for bringing it up.
Is Jelly Roll going to write a song about ICE? That's what I got from the last comments of his speech. So I think, what do you think? Leave a comment, and don't forget to follow me for more hot takes, celebrity news.
Okay, y'all. So last thing about the Grammys, Jelly Roll gets on stage and he's talking about how God is not about a party. He loves everybody. God is for everybody. We know that. Do you? Because you support the party that is the Antichrist. Like, you support the party that is in the files. You support the party that has done harm to children. You will support the party that is full of PDFs. You will support the party that is harmful to women. So I'm really trying to understand it. And I really get sick of these people. He's the classic guy who went to jail and now he's all sought religion. He's the guy who was overweight, into drugs, in jail, and he's a redemption story. And, oh, God brought him out of it. But yet you support a party of hate. Make it make sense. It doesn't. And this is exactly why when y'all get up there and y'all be spouting that Christianity and you believe this and that, and then your actions actually show you align with something different, we don't believe you. You're literally participating in the Klan rally that's going on in opposition to the Super Bowl. You're literally on the ticket, sir. You try to say you're not political, but then you support all of the things. You say that you respect the office, but respecting the office doesn't mean you have to respect the person in the office. That's not synonymous. You can respect that there's an office of the presidency, but you can also say the person that's in the office right now does not deserve respect because they give none. You can say that. You can say that God loves us all, but you're supporting the people that are kicking out people of this country when, like Billie Eilish said, no one is an immigrant on stolen land. So he can miss us with all of that. And I need everybody to wake up to the fact that just because he's got tats and wears his big ass chains, diamond-studded chains, and he does music with black people, doesn't mean that he's for black people. Matter of fact, the people that he does music with are actually against black people. The black people are against black people. So let's start platforming this dude, please, because y'all want to give him so much praise and, oh, he's so nice and he speaks all this Christianity. Those be the main ones. And this is why y'all are always getting bamboozled, because you think if someone mentions the Bible, then that means they're godly. Trump had the Bible too. Get it together.
Saw the stuff about Jello saying he didn't want to comment on ICE. That's smart of him because he knows his fan base. He knows who his audience is. Because he would have made a comment, he would have got a lot of backlash from his supporters. And you know who his supporters also support. Back when he met the president, he said, me and President Trump was cool. I don't really care about any blowback I get. So we know where he stands.
So I can tell you that people shouldn't care to hear my opinion, man. You know, I'm a dumb redneck. I haven't watched enough. I didn't have a phone for 18 months. I've had one for 4 months and don't have social media. I hate to be the artist that's that aloof, but I've become so disconnected from what's happening. And I'm just not I grew up in a house of like insane pandemonium and like I didn't even know politics were fucking real until I was in my mid-20s in jail. Like that's how disconnected. When you grow up in a drug addict household, you think we like have common calls about what's happening in world politics? Like we're just trying to find a way to survive, man, you know? And I have a lot to say about it, and I'm going to in the next week, and everybody's going to hear exactly what I have to say about it in the most loud and clear way I've ever spoken in my life. So I look forward to it. Thank you for bringing it up. People shouldn't care to hear my opinion, man. You know, I'm a dumb redneck. I haven't watched enough. I didn't have a phone for 18 months. I've had one for 4 months and don't have social media. I hate to be the artist that's that aloof, but I've become so disconnected from what's happening, and I'm just not I grew up in a house of like insane pandemonium and like I didn't even know politics were real until I was in my mid-20s in jail. Like that's how disconnected. When you grow up in a drug addict household, you think we like have common calls about what's happening.
Yeah, at this point in time, you should have just gone on stage, grabbed that Grammy, and said, you know what? You should have just told your fans that you don't really care what's currently going on in the United States of America. Even though your fans ended up giving you a voice, your fans ended up giving you a platform to be able to utilize that voice when it truly fucking mattered, plain and simple. But you don't know anything about politics. You have no idea what politics even is. You probably can't even spell politics, but here you are sitting in front of Congress because, you know, a specific organization, a specific political group ended up putting you in that position to do so. And this is that political group, you know, you and Donald Trump just hanging out, kicking it. You know, here you are with Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and Kid Rock. Speaking of Kid Rock, you guys, I'm going to touch on another topic and everything. I heard Turning Point USA is going to be showing their own little halftime show when it comes down to the Super Bowl because, you know, all the MAGA fans are really upset. And Kid Rock is going to be performing at that halftime show. It makes me wonder if Kid Rock's going to play this song during the halftime show. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
I've been seeing a lot of mixed reactions about Jelly Roll's acceptance speech at the Grammys this year, so let's talk about it. Jelly Roll won the award tonight for Best Contemporary Country Album, and during his acceptance speech, he gave a sweet shout out to his wife, Bunny XO. He says, "I would have never changed my life without you. I would have been dead or in jail." He also says, "I would have unalived myself if it wasn't for you and Jesus." He talks about how he wrote this album at a time where he was broken, and he also thanks Jesus in his speech and says that he is listening. Jelly Roll says that music and God changed his life. And in his speech, he also emphasizes that Jesus is for everybody. And Jesus is not owned by one political party. Jesus is not owned by no music label. Jesus is Jesus. And anybody can have a relationship with him. Again, this got a lot of mixed reactions from people online. Some people are like, why is he shoving Christianity down our throats? Other people are calling him MAGA. I don't know much about Jelly Roll, so I don't know his political stance or anything like that. But I really like what he said about Jesus not having a political party. I'm Catholic, and I hate that Catholicism and Christianity is so deeply associated with Republican MAGA because trust and believe I am the furthest thing from a Republican MAGA. So I don't know, personally, I liked that he emphasized that Jesus has no political party, and I think that goes for any religion. But let me know your thoughts on his speech down below and follow me for more Grammys coverage.
And I will say, Jelly Roll's acceptance speech going full on preacher mode just didn't sit right with me. He started off by saying, I'm going to get this out really quick before they cut me off. I know I can't stand up here too long. I just want to thank God and give God all the glory or whatever. I don't remember exactly specifically what he said, but then he did not hurry up. He just went on and on and on and then started sounding like a Southern Baptist preacher as he was giving his Grammys acceptance, which, like, whatever. You can thank God in your acceptance speech. A lot of people did that. I personally wouldn't, but plenty of people have faith. Faith is
is not the issue. I do take issue with him launching into his entire formulaic testimony with a like preacher's cadence. Just doesn't sit right with me. It's giving culty, and usually when celebrities go really hard into the Jesus and preachy stuff, there's something not right going on behind the scenes. It's actually a common tactic of predatory people to cling to some type of religion, or even celebrities to cling to some type of religion for good PR, because they want you to overlook something else that is wrong. So it just doesn't sit right with me. Thanking Jesus, thanking his wife, saying that like he would be nothing without them, giving too much, giving grifty vibes, reminding me a little too much of Russell Brand for my liking, but that is just me. What did you think of Jelly Roll's full-on preacher mode?
I can tell you that people shouldn't care to hear my opinion, man. You know, I'm a dumb redneck. I haven't watched enough. I didn't have a phone for 18 months.
You don't know much about politics, but you always hanging around Trump supporters, Trump politicians, people in the Trump administration, other Trump supporters, Kid Rock, your Trump supporting wife. I'm lost. But you're illiterate when it comes to politics. But you always hanging out with one set of group of people that are very much into politics. I don't believe this, man. Jelly Roll, cut the shit. You're a white man from the South. Like, come on, man. Are you embarrassed to say out loud you're a Trump supporter? We can see it. We can see you. The glass is literally transparent. We can see right through it, sir. Like, you know what Ozempic is, but you don't know what politics are. Please.
People shouldn't care to hear my opinion, man. You know, I'm a dumb redneck. I haven't watched enough. I didn't have a phone for 18 months. I've had one for 4 months and don't have social media. I hate to be the artist that's static, aloof, but I've come so...
Translation, I support Trump. I support ICE. I'm not going to show you pictures of him and Trump together because we all seen the pictures of him and Trump. It's very obvious, right? This is the same conversation that we're talking about with higher up wellness. Oh, you don't want to hear my opinion? Oh, the blatant, oh, did I vote for this? Oh, I can't remember. The gaslighting, right? And believe it or not, this has been a thing in America for generations where people will vote against the general population and then say, well, whoopsie, oh, my bad, because it doesn't exactly affect them at the moment. And his little Jesus speech saying that Jesus doesn't belong to a specific political party is carefully crafted, right? So that he does not upset his racist fan base that he knows he has. Because the truth is, these people are supported by racist people and they're comfortable with it because it does not affect them at the moment.
People shouldn't care to hear my opinion, man. You know, I'm a dumb redneck. I haven't watched enough. I didn't have a phone for 18 months. I've had one for 4 months and don't have social media. I hate to be the artist that's static, aloof, but I've become so disconnected from what's happening, and I'm just not I grew up in a house of like insane pandemonium, and like I didn't even know politics were real until I was in my mid-20s in jail. Like, that's how disconnected. When you grow up in a drug addict household, you think we like have common calls about what's happening?
Pretty hard watch there. 0 out of 10. Not that any of us were in the dark about where Jelly Roll fell on the political spectrum, but what bothers me the most about this is that he is signaling to rural Americans that if you consider yourself to be a dumb redneck, and that's a cultural identifier, that's not necessarily something they say about their intelligence level in reality. If you consider yourself to be a dumb redneck, that you should also be disconnected from politics. That if you're a real hardworking American that deals with real American problems, that you don't have time to worry about all that nonsense. You're above the fray of politics. But what he's not saying there is that he's disconnected from his beliefs. That very specific brand of defending oneself from being silent and not talking about politics that Jelly Roll showed us yesterday at the Grammys is very specific to American Republicans. I don't know if you would necessarily consider Jelly Roll a diehard MAGA in the sense that I'm about to explain, but I don't even think diehard MAGA Republicans fall in this category. I think they're not necessarily that concerned about it. They are very like out there with their beliefs, and they like say the awful quiet part out loud. But people like Jelly Roll, they do want to believe that, you know, they're a red-blooded American that is so busy with their job and trying to keep their family and their life together and you know, earn their living and overcome their traumas and their hardships and pull themselves up by their bootstraps, that they don't have time to worry about what's going on in immigrant communities and whether the federal government is abusing their power, or whether or not we're opening concentration camps in Texas and Maine. But in private, in their own mind, in their own heart, they still, you know, really think that all of it is necessary and okay, and they support all of it. They just don't feel it's necessary to talk about it, or they just use it as an excuse because they're ashamed of their beliefs. And that's what I've been saying all morning. Their Jelly Roll is like dancing around the shit because he doesn't want to say to all the reporters at the Grammys that he's a Trump supporter, even though we all know already. And it is really just a testament to how disconnected Jelly Roll is to the genre that he touts to be the best of in his category, because he is completely disconnected to the politics of country music in general, which is a completely different conversation that I kind of wish that I would have been concentrating on this whole time. To sit there and act like a dumb redneck that grew up in a traumatic childhood, that somehow excludes you from participating in political conversation, and that being a country artist excludes you from participating in political conversations and having a public opinion, is nonsense, considering the predecessors that came before you literally made that their whole career. Not all of them, but a lot of them. He's a fucking poser. Himself as the artist and his art do not acknowledge the cultures that he appropriates, and he doesn't acknowledge the history of the genre that he represents. Poor rural folks that had traumatic childhoods have political opinions, okay? He's just a dumbass that is ashamed of his and doesn't want to get canceled.
Recovery is political. Substance use and substance use disorders are political. Poverty is political. Marriage is political. Prisons and incarceration are political. Your upbringing, childhood, parenting, all political. The Super Bowl halftime show and the Super Bowl and sports, all political. Music is political. Awards are political. Weight loss is political. Religion is super political. Your gender, race, and sexuality, all political. The phrase dumb redneck, political. Saying you're not political, super political. Hope that helps.
Leave Jelly Roll alone. You know, the man got up on stage at the Grammys and talked about how much he loves Jesus Christ. And guess who's got a problem with it? The tolerant left. The man just wanted to talk about his Lord and Savior, and then people are asking him about politics. Hey Jelly, what do you think about people getting shot? Hey Jelly, what's your stance on ICE? If I want to hear from Jelly Roll, it's going to be mediocre music at a slightly low volume while I'm driving the kids to Walmart to get our groceries that, you know, still haven't come down yet, but I trust Trump. I trust the tariffs. You know, this stuff doesn't happen overnight, even though he said on day one the groceries prices will come down. I still trust him. I still believe in him. But why should I care about what Jelly Roll has to say about innocent people getting murdered in the streets? Not everybody has to have a take on that. You know, are you left? Are you right? Are you okay with ICE agents wearing masks and just murdering people in broad daylight? Jelly Roll, like, he shouldn't have to answer that. If he's, you know, doesn't keep up with the news and hasn't had a cell phone in 4 years or whatever, then that's fine. Like, I don't have to know Jelly Roll's opinion on the most blatant, obvious government murders that are happening right in front of our face.
Jelly Roll. Everybody's talking about Jelly Roll at the Grammys and his speech that he gave, and it's very split. A lot of people are saying Jelly Roll's fake and he's not authentic and he's just paid and blah, blah, blah. And then the other half saying, you know, he's such a godly man and he could be a preacher and whatever it is. And this is my opinion. Really mind your business. Nobody knows Jelly Roll's heart except God. That's it. It's not my place or your place to judge the guy. We don't know his authenticity. And frankly, it shouldn't matter to you. You should be focused on yourself, your family, your loved ones, and your salvation. The Bible tells us, you know, take the log out of your own eye before you go looking at other people. And that's exactly what this is. Jelly Roll might be sincere, he might not. Once again, that's between him and God. Leave it alone.
You know, what made the reaction stronger is that ignorance itself is protected by whiteness in ways it never for black people. A black artist claiming they didn't know about ICE raids, police violence, or systemic injustice would likely be labeled as responsible, right? Uneducated or complicit. When a white artist does the same, it is often reframed as honesty, simplicity, or being apolitical. That double standard is part of the problem because it reinforces the idea that white people can disengage from harm happening around them and still be centered, celebrated, and excused. Just get excused for doing all that. So, this disconnect also reveals how white America often treats racial harm as a niche instead of a national one. ICE is not just an immigration agency. It is tied to histories of racial profiling, family separation, labor exploitation, and state violence, all of which disproportionately affect black and brown communities. So to dismiss awareness as unnecessary is to quietly affirm that these lives exist on margins of moral concerns. That mindset is not accidental. It is the result of a system that teaches white Americans that injustice is optional knowledge. Injustice is optional knowledge. Remember, we said that remaining silent in a situation of injustice is being complacent to injustice. So you are complying to what all these people want you to do, because that's what they have always wanted you to do. That's what they have always wanted you to be. You being part of the problem, you falling for being part of the system. So Jelly Roll really disappointed me in that. But at the end of the day, we are not surprised. We are not surprised. Personally, as a person who have been listening to Jelly Roll's music because I like that type of contemporary voice, and really being disappointed to hear him what he says as a person. Although I still love his music, but I'm really disappointed in that. Another thing is that the framing of "I don't have a phone, I'm not into politics" also sidesteps accountability. In an age where information is unavoidable, choosing not to engage is itself a political act, one that benefits the status quo. Black people do not get to unplug from policies that decide whether their neighborhoods are overpoliced, whether their families are surveilled, or whether their communities are criminalized. The ability to disengage is a proof of insulation, and that insulation is a key feature of white dominance in America, right? And also, another layer of the problem is how whiteness is allowed to define neutrality. See, by treating silence as harmless, white America avoids confronting how silence protects harmful systems. When influential figures decline to speak up because they believe the issue does not concern them, they reinforce the idea that injustice only matters when it disrupts with comfort, white comfort. So for black audiences, this feels like betrayal, not because everyone must speak, but because the refusal to care mirror centuries of selective empathy. Selective empathy. That's what I've been talking about for the longest time. So this moment also highlights how white American often misunderstands its role in systemic harm. The problem is not just overt racism. It's the widespread belief that racism exists somewhere else, carried out by other people. So, by distancing himself from the issue, Jelly Roll unintentionally echoed the myth that white people are spectators rather than beneficiaries of the system. That myth allows injustice to continue without moral friction because no one feels personally responsible. And this reaction matters because it reminded Black people why progress is slow and exhausting. When those with the most protection feel no urgency to pay attention, the burden of awareness and resistance remain one on those already carrying the weight. White America being unaware is not accidental. It is structural. And until the difference is recognized as part of the problem, moments like these will keep resurfacing, not as isolated incidents, but as a reflection of a deeper national failure to care equally. So I really don't know, because I was really disappointed by just watching this thing happen. Listening to Jelly Roll talk about this, I was really, really disappointed in him. But at the end of the day, we got to talk about all these issues. So please let me know what you think about this video. And as you know, I'm your host and presenter Next Stories. But until then, let me see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.